Should I say testing?
Testing.
Okay.
I think it's close enough to 7. I'd rather be a minute early than a minute late. So why don't we go ahead and get started. I wanted to make sure everyone knew that we are following CDC guidelines. So I'm looking around the room. I see no masks. I'm assuming everyone's had their shots. If not, we do ask that you put a mask on. Thank you for that. Also, we are recording this meeting. Yeah. So if you told somebody you're someplace else, you might want to go to the behind the camera view. But we are recording it and it will be up on YouTube for those that can't be in attendance with us live. Some of you may have noticed that not everyone is equal. Some of the name tags have red for their lanyard color. If you do, that's because you are a member of the executive board or one of the advisory groups that are key individuals that make up all the support that makes not just these meetings, but all the workings of the guild work smoothly. So that's what the red means, and we'll introduce those folks later. I wanted to mention how successful the swap meet was this past Saturday. I know a lot of you were out there in attendance, and I was told that we sold over $1,000 worth of guild equipment, so that's going to go back in the bank. And I especially want to thank a few individuals who, really, all that equipment in the barn. So I've got Denny Payne. Denny, are you here tonight? No? Watson and Dan Coleman are, so you three guys really helped make that equipment in the barn so successful in us being able to sell it. So thank you for that. I also wanted to mention I call it the You Move It team that was responsible for lugging it in and out of the barn. That is no easy task. So thank you all who did that. Let's see. You guys may not realize that as an organization, we have really upped our game, so to speak, as far as our meetings go and our AV support. And none of that would have happened without the dedication of Hal Donovan, David Zeman, and then Brian Ellison has joined the group as well. So thank you. Thank you, guys. Okay, now I'd like to do a quick introduction of the Executive and Advisory Board. So, I need slides, please. Okay, next. Do I have a clicker? Would you hand that to? Oh. Thank you, Vanna. Okay. Welcome. Okay, we've done that. Okay, agenda. You can see we have started the meeting, 7 o'clock. All right, the officers. Well, I am Vicki Berry, and I am president for this term. And next is Bill Shucott. Bill is vice president and also has programs and presentations. Is Adam here tonight? Adam Connors is our recording secretary and keeps all the minutes for us. Tom Tierney, are you around the corner? Tom keeps the slush fund for us. And then we have 4 directors, and those directors each have a 4-year term. First up, Dan Lender. Dan? I know Jay Nossinger is here. Jay, thank you. As is Dan Sukamp, behind the desk, and Don Turner. Okay, thank you. Then the executive board is made up of all those officers, plus our immediate past president, which is Wayne Watson, who is in the back middle of the room. Oh, I'm looking at Watson and thinking about Wayne. I'm sorry. Wayne Humphrey. Okay. Did somebody do that? Okay. Then we have other members that attend our monthly meetings. And Brian Ellison has accepted the job as the official webmaster title that's in the bylaws. Bob Furman shared with me that he was stepping down last week, so I was fortunate enough to be able to thank him for all his work. For all his work in keeping the website up and current. So Brian's taken over that role. Rich Weitzman behind the toy desk. And then we have the book box committee chair, Tom Tierney again, behind the checkbook. Wayne Watson, shop manager. And then Bill Schucott again takes care of all our programs and presentations and classes. Dave Schindler, are you behind the table as well? Has membership. And he's also chair of our marketing and membership committee. It hasn't been real active because we just haven't done a lot of that. But then the all-important Grady Vaughn, who is our newsletter editor and official photographer. And keeps us out of trouble, Bill Hobson, our legal counsel. I know he's here. Oh, there he is, way in the back. Then we have a few other, David. David changed his title. I called him the IT master. He changed it to IT administrator. David's the one that keeps everything connected behind the scenes so that everything works. So without him, I don't know where we'd be. John Bronson is in charge of our mentor program. John. And Al Carlson, way back in the back, has all those boxes for our library. And then Dave Gronefeld, did I say that right? Yeah. Close enough? Good. Is the assistant shop manager to Wayne Watson. And then if we ever have the opportunity to participate in a woodworking show, that's an open position. All right. Since March of last year, we wanted to count how many new members we had. So anybody with a red tag can't answer this. And I have on my dresser that I forgot to bring a $10 gift card to Rockler for the first person that guesses the correct number of newest members, excluding tonight, since March of 2020. Who said that? Yes. Did you know? Yeah, you each get half, $5 card each. Yeah, 62 members. So what's amazing is that's 25% of our active membership. I just think that is amazing. So, what are you doing? What are you doing with my slides? What?
One other thing.
Yes, sir?
June of last year, we had 231 members.
Okay.
June of this year, 246.
You know, I personally think, considering what kind of last 15 months we had to have our membership grow like that, Just shows the strength and the worthiness of this organization. So thank you for everyone who renewed. Fortunately, now we've got the shop back open and we're open for business. So thank you. All right, we're ahead of the game here. Okay, so John Bronson, would you mind coming up and speaking a few words about the mentoring program? Sure. You know, first off, how many members tonight are one of those 62? Would you please stand? Hopefully, some of the red string people have gotten around and talked to you. We'd love for you to get to know us, as we'd love to get to know each of you. So I won't make you say your names unless you want to. Anybody want to? Yes. Angie? Angie, welcome. Brian, welcome. Who else? Roger? Stell? Is that it? Well, welcome to all of you. And thank you very much for being at our first in-person meeting. And hopefully you'll be participating in a lot more and more of our classes, because one of the things that we, as the board talked about, is the importance of having a strong mentoring program. Because when you come in, we come in at all levels of experience. And I know, I mentioned to someone, I'm down here. 5 years ago, I was, you know, maybe 6 inches less. But it's through the kindness, the generosity, and the experience of the rest of you in this room that I've been able to hone my skills. I wish that I was doing more, but that's my problem. That's nobody's but mine. But we are re-emphasizing our mentoring program, and I want John to just speak a few words about what he's got going.
Can I use that microphone?
Yes, you can use that microphone.
Hello, everybody. Glad to see so many familiar faces again. The mentorship program for the last couple of years had 14 mentors. In the last few months, I've lost 5 of them. I haven't lost them and they haven't died or anything, but their lives have gotten in the way and they don't have time to be mentors anymore. So I would like to have at least 5 new mentors to take their place, and I think it's a worthwhile job. A mentor is a teacher, someone to take a new woodworker under their wing and teach them the basics, or teach them specific skills that they're interested in learning.
In this application, what does the mentor do?
Okay, generally the mentor would have the more equipped workshop than a new person would, and so they would host the mentees, the student, at their workshop, and teach them, you know, safety protocols, how to use various pieces of equipment, and probably help them with projects.
Would they also be able to work with them at the shop? Or if a mentee was in the process of buying their own equipment, a mentor could come to their place and make sure that they are using that equipment properly.
Exactly, or they could even give them advice on what to buy and what order to buy things. You know, certain pieces of equipment are, if you're starting off with nothing, you know, there's a few basic pieces of equipment that everybody should probably have, and a mentor could help with that. And yes, they definitely could meet out at the workshop. And what in the past, what I've tried to do is find out what the mentees, the students' interests are, and I would try to match them with mentors that had those skills, and generally in the same geographic area, so it wasn't too much of a hassle to get together.
Any other questions?
Who's applying or requesting to be mentored?
I'm sorry, what?
Who's requesting being mentored? How are these people coming to you?
They would volunteer. They could email me. They could call me. Mentees. Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Everyone needs to repeat the question for online viewers.
Okay. So who has to repeat that? I do. I'm sorry.
Or I can repeat. The question is, how do the mentees sign up? Where do they come from?
Okay. Generally, when they register, there's a box on the form that you fill out that would say that they're interested in being mentored. Or they could, if it's somebody that's an existing mentor or an existing member, and they decide that they would like to be mentored in something, they can just tell me or tell one of the board members, me.
Yeah. You
Well,
know,
if
all
I'm
our
here.
names and addresses are listed on the web page. So it's easy to reach out and find John's email.
Yes, sir.
Is there a skill list of who has what skill?
Is
No.
there a skill list of who
No.
has what skills?
No, there's not, but there very well could be. I could put that together.
That's one of the things that John and I haven't had a chance to talk about, but that is exactly what we were hoping mentors would also identify their skill levels, as well as the mentees, what skills they want to work on. You know, to keep it simple, I would say I wouldn't ask more than 3 items at a time so we can get it up and running, and then as we hone things, then we can certainly add more. But for now, I'd just like the mentors to identify maybe their top 3 skill sets
Yes.
for matching up with mentees. Any other questions about the program? All right, thank you, John.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I hope that those that are new tonight, whether you're new as a woodworker or even have experience as a woodworker and want to be a mentor, we'd love to have you as part of the program. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Who's doing this? Okay, Bill, would you?
You're doing it.
Yeah, okay. Bill, would you please come up and share what you've got coming up?
But I want the clicker.
Well, you only get 2 pages, and that's one of them.
That's one. Good evening, everybody. Did it change on its own?
No, you need to go backwards now. Go back.
I got to read it too.
Go back. Somebody go back.
No, we're okay.
Okay.
Are the classes ahead of this? Okay. This is a schedule of upcoming classes through the end of the year. Classes run into December, and then we take a break, and I'm in the process of putting together classes for next year. If anybody has a class or an idea for a class that they would like to have taught, send me an email. You can find my name, or you can send it to Vice President at stlouiswoodworkersguild.com, and that'll get to me as well. What happened here? I thought it was Vicky. So what we have coming up is the shorty classes. We have a series of short classes before an open shop day. So the open shop starts at 9 in the morning. The little shorty classes that we're going to be giving are from 8 to 9. The one that I'm going to be teaching in a week and a half is on hand planes. An hour is a short period of time, but if you're not familiar with a hand plane, we'll get you up and running on that. Alex Gerberding has a couple more of the advanced SketchUp classes, and then that runs out. July 1 is the next safety class. David Brown is going to be teaching turning bowls with green wood. We're taking off for the holiday. Alex has another SketchUp class. Wayne has another safety class in August. The safety class is once a month. Jay Knopfsinger is going to teach one of the shorty classes on band. Mike Steck is going to teach a class on the lead jigs. If you guys have, it is really a phenomenal tool. I have one at home on a regular basis. It does a fabulous job for setting up for dovetails, and they don't have to be evenly spaced. You can adjust them to however you want your design to look. I think it does more than that. I'm hoping that will appraise me of those other functions. Wayne Watson is going to be teaching a class on mortise and tenon joinery. Another safety class in there. Wayne's going to teach a class on through dovetails. Don Snyder's going to teach a class on, he has another joinery class on half-blind dovetails. I'm going to teach a 2-day class on building an Adirondack chair. Mike Sistek is going to teach another class on squaring up a board by hand. Wayne Watson suggested that we get some ironwood to try and do that with. Wayne has another joinery class on spline miter joints. Brad Bernhard is going to teach a class, a bowl turning class, and then Wayne at the end of the season is going to teach a class on biscuit joinery. Upcoming presentations, Wayne Watson and Dan Coleman together are going to talk about buying used tools. Ellen Lang did an apprenticeship building boats, and she's going to talk about her apprenticeship in August. In September, Mike Sistek is going to talk about joinery in a variety of ways. And then again in October, he's going to teach finishing with oil-based, water-based, shellac, brushed, sprayed, etc. And we have an outside guest in November. Mary May has a nationally recognized program in carving, and she's either going to come here or we'll do a Zoom meeting for everybody that's here to be on the screen. I haven't got that worked out. We'll see how much money's in the budget, since she has to come from North Carolina. So that's what we have scheduled. If anybody has a subject they would like addressed, send me an email with what that is. I think there's a note at the bottom that I skipped over on classes. There is a new SketchUp class for beginners that's going to start on July 17th. That's going to run for 8 weeks, once a week, for anybody that wants to learn SketchUp. That'll be a great way to get into it.
How long is it? Per class, how long is it?
An hour, hour and a half, something like that. And then the fundamentals of woodworking that Wayne Watson teaches is wrapping up for the current year, and there will be a new class that begins August 22nd. I think there's been a lot of demand for that. We certainly have a lot of new members that it would be applicable for. And that'll run for 10 or 11 months. It's a once-a-month class that meets on Sundays. And this year, we're going to set the class up so that there can be 14 people that take the class. So if you're interested in that, it's on the website, so sign up for it.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. So we've got a full year ahead of us. I'm going to go back a couple of slides because many of you had participated in the Build a Box program that Tom Tierney brought to us a couple of years ago. And then we also started the desk program. And I wanted you to just share where we're at, what's going on. You have to use the mic. Where are we on these programs, Tom?
Well, I guess the good news is the Bring Me a Book St. Louis organization is exceeding, I guess, their contributions of new books. They just received about 100,000 books that they will be distributing to the area, to the kids in the area over the next several months. I guess what that does for us, though, is he's got no time for the book box program at this point. The program started a couple of years ago. We delivered 1,068 book boxes. He's distributed about 900 of those. So he still has some inventory. And then he got this delivery of 100,000 books. So he has backed away from the box program. So I guess the program's been suspended for now. I was hoping we'd start building them this month, but looks like it won't be until next year, early next year. So that's where we are in the book box program. Also, he was distributing the desks for us, and he has no room to store the desks, nor does he have the time to distribute the desks. So we have 30 desks built right now, excuse me, and we're taking June off as far as building desks while we look for a new distributor for the desks. So I'm pretty confident we'll find somebody to distribute the desks for us. So that program, we're taking a month off, but we should be back making desks in July and August.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
that it? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, okay. Thank you.
So where do they go and what do they do?
Well, the book box program was in association or in partnership with the charitable organization called Bring Me a Book, or Bring Me a Book? Yeah, Bring Me a Book St. Louis. I'm getting old. And he's an organization that there's several of them in the country. He's funded out of California, and their mission was to provide new books to needy children, underserved areas in the St. Louis metropolitan area, St. Charles County, Jefferson County, Warren County. So we had a pretty good reach. So that the book back program was, we built a 12 by 16 wooden box, and he would give the box and 5 books to the needy children. So that was the book box program. The desk program was something that Rockler had a contest, I think. Wayne Humphrey brought it to our attention. And it is desks that we build out of plywood and poplar, and those go to underserved kids. Was during when they were doing homeschooling. The need is not as great now, but there are a lot of kids that do need desks at home so they have a place to study. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Wayne? Wayne Humphrey has fallen into the role of the Christmas toy program lead. And oh, that's me, sorry. There you go.
The organization's been building toys since 1994 and keeping a record of it, and you've probably read in the newsletter that we've donated some 77,000 toys over the years. And there's some of them on the table over there if you want to look at them tonight. And we have, since COVID hit, the number of toys that the hospitals can use has dropped considerably. So we built up an inventory of toys. So we're thinking that there's a need at Christmas time for toys for TOTS and some other organizations that could use toys that are serving underprivileged kids. So we're going to start a program of building some toys for Christmas. These are a little fancier toys than what we build on a monthly basis, and a little more complex, a little more finishing to them. Can we go back to the slide? There you go. Things like a little rocking horse up there for toddlers. That's one plan that we've got. We've got another plan to build one that's a little bit different than that. Some airplanes. The airplane's made out of 1/4-inch Baltic birch and 2x4s. We've got a barn set down here with a car and animals, and toy trucks over there that came out of one of the magazines a few years ago that we built a number of those. Things like a ferry with some cars and a boat, a little more complex. A crawling bug with the legs that move, and made out of 2x4s and 1/4-inch Baltic birch, basically. And then some animals down there that are originally Noah's Ark animals. That's the type of thing that we're looking at. There's also over on the table with the show and tell stuff, a pull toy. Linda Turner built that pull toy, and I think that's something that we can be building too. Any kid that's just walking likes to be able to drag a pull toy behind them. It's got ears that move and gets painted up. And one of the things is we're going to go out to the shop, we're going to fabricate these things. We'll probably have to take some of the parts home, finish fabrication on them, and then find some people that will finish them also. Paint some eyes on them. Some of these require gluing color copies onto them to get all the bright colors that are on there. So we're going to start that program, see if we can't get a couple of groups maybe together to do it. The first program is going to probably be hopefully on a Saturday afternoon, and a get together just for an hour or so, try to figure out what we think we'd want to build. We can't build them all at one time, and what we can batch through and what people's interests are. So we'll be setting a date for that thing, getting it on the calendar, and I'll get an email out to everybody when we set that date, and certainly invite all of you to participate either in the as a group out in the shop when we do these things. Try to do them on Saturday, probably have to do some of them during the week, or it's something that you can get the pattern and you can do some of them at home and contribute to the program.
But it's an excellent program for those that are new to woodworking, because you'll be working with other individuals, and it's just a great learning experience for you. So think about that if you're new to woodworking. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Wayne, if you would stay here a minute. As you know, president of the guild is a one-year term, and too many times, once the president's in, they stay in for more than a year. I think Sistek did 3 or 4. 3, and Wayne did 2, and did 2 during what I would say is probably one of our more difficult years, but he kept us on point. And as you saw, we have grown as an organization. So in appreciation of your leadership and your guidance and your friendship, we have a couple of things in there. Why are you laughing?
It's a whole box full of, a whole bag full of stuff.
Well, share it. You
Yep.
could share it. It won't bite. So as you know, Wayne is an avid fisherman, and if he's not in the shop, he's in his boat somewhere. So, he's been doing woodworking and fishing for probably as long as I've been alive. So we got him a couple of gift cards so he can expand both his tackle box and or your shop as you so see fit, and then Jeff Nasser, who was a presenter a few months ago. We have one of his pens for you as well in a Plano leak-proof box for your tackle.
So, thank you
So
all.
thank you
all
very
very
much.
much.
All right, I think it's time for the raffle. Everybody got your tickets, last minute purchases. Mr. Turner over there has the envelope. Okay, oh, Bill, come on, I'm waiting. Oh, so some of the things we have. I have a couple of Rockler gift cards, Wardcraft and Rockler. I have, Brady, what is it? It's an adjustable contour gauge. Obviously, I don't have one. And then Brian brought us his all-terrain mobile base. So 4 really nice items. What should we go first? Somebody name which one you want to go first. Okay. Okay. Oh, I have a ticket. No, I have a ticket. No, I have 6 tickets. Well, you need a neutral party to. Who did?
Didn't buy any tickets.
You guys usually win. How come you didn't buy a ticket?
Nobody came around. Last time we did that. 4625. I guess I'm supposed to read that.
4625. I heard.
4625.
Oh! There's the Rockler gift card. All right.
Four, 6, 4, 2.
4642. Oh, Dave. What's your pleasure?
I'll take the gift card.
The gift card. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Four, 6, 1, 2.
4612. Okay. All right, Stell. Thank you. Okay, contour gauge or mobile base?
Take the base.
All right.
All right.
Last one.
Thank you for that invite. Oh, yeah. All right. 4667.
4667. All right. The contour gauge is yours. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Rich, do you have a count for me? $224 toys were collected tonight, so thank you, everyone. Thank you. All right. We are ready to start show and tell. Man, we're pretty. What? You said I'm doing this. Well, that's what I'm trying to control. Now, what did you do? I need you to go to the show and tell slide. The first show and tell slide, please. There, first show and tell. Yeah. Okay. It's all yours.
First chart.
I got it.
Okay, a couple years ago, we had a box building class on a weekend with Doug Stowe, and about 20 people made it. And then we had a competition to everybody make a box, and at that time, I showed you guys a box very similar to this. And I made the comment, I said, you know, I was really pleased with it. And it's a puzzle box. You had to figure out how to open it. I'll show you what the inside looks like that. But at the time, it didn't have that coin in it. And one of my trademarks for my Free Me puzzles that I've made, this is Free Me 8, so that's how many we're up to. I'll talk about 7 just in a moment. Anyway, as I said, originally the box didn't have a coin. I said if I could add a coin to it, I could make it a Free Me puzzle, and then I could sell it to my collectors. And so I figured out how to do that, and I incorporated the coin. Next chart. So over the last year, I made 150 of them. That's how I felt, yeah. I made 100 out of cherry. Those are for sale. And then I made 50 for friends and family, and those were out of walnut and maple. Next chart, stay right there. These are the ones that were for gifts, and what's interesting is the 100 I made, all identical, same top, etc. And the top is a veneer that I learned how to do. I'd never done that before. So every time I make a puzzle, there's always something new that I'm experimenting with. But these, my son, 5-10 years ago, bought me a sample pack of veneers, and I said, well, thanks. And I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do with these? And so I thought, hey, what a perfect time to incorporate them into a puzzle. So there's a whole lot of different types of wood veneers on those. That gives them a different look to them. And so, okay, next chart. So just a little detail, I said 150. Took 450 hours to produce them all. Each puzzle has 84 pieces, if you look down in the bottom, 84 parts prior to gluing and pressing together, and after I do all that, 39 pieces that go into the box and all the... I submitted this puzzle to the 2020 International Puzzle Design Competition last year, and in January, they let us know what happened, and so there was 47 people presented. 4 of them got recognized with what they call the, jury honorable mention, and I was one of those. And so it was really, nice. It's always nice to be appreciated in that way. One of the things they give you is a puzzle, and so that's this puzzle. And I'll put it over there, but please don't touch it because I haven't taken it apart because I don't have the solution, and so I don't know if I can get it back together. But someday I will. When I got time, I'll play with it. But so that's what's been going on with me.
All right, thank you. And congratulations on your jury honorable mention. All right, now we'll do the rest of the show and tell. So if you have items up on the table, if you would just come up, we'll go left to right. Who has the pens? Brian? Yeah. Okay. I know, I forgot. Ooh.
That was fun.
So we're setting this up so you don't have to hold a microphone when you do your show and tell. And then we have a camera for you to put your show and tell item. You don't have to put you, but your item goes in front of the camera.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if you could see these. I've been making pins for a while. I got tired of just turning wood, and so I got into making my own. I get a lot of people asking me to make them for them, and so I make a lot of them out of guitar picks. So that is a guitar pick that I melt around a tube that I paint, and then I create the plastic or the
Resin?
Resin, yeah. Acrylic, yeah, that's it. And I got that one, and this is another one. I love the Beatles. So those are a lot of my show pieces. It's kind of hard to show everything. We tried this earlier, and it wasn't coming out too great because everything's too small. But over here, I have a bunch of them that I'm making, and it shows in different stages of how I create these things. A lot of times, I'll take a picture. One of the great things are when people have grandkids. I'll take a picture of the child, and I'll put that in a pen, and I'll give that to them for their kid's birth.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you sell these pens?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Bill, did you want to talk about your violin progress?
I think a lot of people know that I've been working on building a violin. Over the years, I've built a lot of casework, and I got tired of doing that, so I decided I'd try something that I didn't know how to do. So I'm in the process of building this violin, learning new skills. I'd never used hide glue before. And since I dropped this once and broke a rib and then had to take it apart, I found out why you use hide glue, so you can take it apart. I also learned that the hide glue that I bought the first time was the wrong kind of hide glue, and it set up too fast. So lots of things to learn. Bending the ribs was new for me. There were a lot of outfits that would be happy to sell me electric iron to bend the wood pieces around. Of course, they wanted $160 for that, and I didn't think that was worthwhile to do for building one violin, which is my intention. So I bought a piece of 1-inch pipe at Home Depot, and I heated up with a torch, and if it gets too cool, then I heat it up again. So that's worked out pretty well, and I've been happy with the way that's come out. The next thing that I've been working on is, this is the back of the violin. It's a flamed maple piece of wood. The carving for both the front and the back of the violin is sort of a 3-stage process. Step one, after you get the outline cut out, is to carve it with a gouge. And I have some guides that I follow for the various curvature pieces. And the second step is you use a little finger plane to smooth it out. It seemed like it was pretty smooth until I put the plane on it, and then I could feel all the ridges from the carbon gouges. And of course, the finger planes that I bought a little set of 5 or 6 of them, and I bought some knockoff brand, and they proceeded to do a lot of tear out. So I decided, I read something and it said you really ought to be using a toothed plane. Well, the little knockoff set had cutters, none of which were available as a tooth cutter. So I had to buy an Ibex plane with a tooth cutter for it. So I spent another $90 for that. But the tooth cutter has made a big difference, and it's gone very well. The third step is to use a scraper, and I haven't gotten to that yet, but I have made a little progress with the plane since I got the tooth cutters. I'll keep you appraised as it moves along.
Thank you, Bill.
Question?
Do you play the violin?
No, I don't play a violin, but I have a friend that does, so it'll get checked out when I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Is that the salt and pepper shaker?
I've been making these
Jeff,
for probably over here.
can you come over here, please? Stand in front of the camera. Hold your item up.
There you go.
In front of the camera. And then
Thank you. For about 20 years. This one's 14 inches high, and while the pandemic was going on, I don't think I bought much wood, so I just went around the shop, collected scrap, and would put together what I could find in a symmetrical manner. Now this one is, that's poplar, that's black walnut, that's cherry, and that's mahogany, and it goes around the same way. So that's got 8 pieces of wood plus the holly inlay on top.
beautiful.
And they are totally functional. The mechanisms are pretty good. And this one, and if you want to check them afterward, look at them on the bottom, because that shows the entire form of construction. It's 3 times 3 plus some kind of wood up the center that's going to be totally drilled out. And this one is more of the same woods, poplar, cherry, walnut, poplar, mahogany, walnut, and cherry. And the wood on top is called quebracho. It's probably the hardest wood in the Western Hemisphere. So I just had a little bit left over, so I turned a 1 1/4 inlay that meets the corners here. I
Beautiful.
have given some of them away to my sister and her brother-in-law for weddings and things.
How'd you draw out the middle?
I draw on the lathe. When it's a square block, I chuck it up on one end, have about a 7-inch drill bit, drill halfway through, turn it around, drill it again, and then put plugs at both ends, which I've already made, and the plugs and the hole will control how the thing turns out. And for the top, I didn't use part of this. I turn maple plugs about 1 5. I turn maple plugs about 1 5/8, drill it into the head about 1 inch, and just a slight sleeve fit like a bearing. Put that in with CA glue, and then drill the little holes in for the mechanism to fit in the top and mechanism to fit in the bottom. And the chuck will grab it while I turn it.
Okay, thank you. Who did this? Thank you.
Just a petite little thing. This is the result of a gift. So roundabout, I wound up with a packet of veneers from Don Snyder, but not directly. And so I had the opportunity, and the rest of it is cherry and maple, and that came out of Tom Tierney's scrap box. So I was starting with small pieces, so I had to, cut it up into about 150 little pieces. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers at 18 pieces per layer to give you the. And then inside there's a series of veneers. Again, that's the veneers I got from Don. He had a whole bunch of different colors, and those are inlaid. And there's veneers between each layer as well. So obviously, I'm a wood turner as a kind of my primary woodworking activity. And this piece is an open segmented and a solid segment. It's got both types of segments. And it's also, to get the scalloping and the design on the inside, is done on an ornamental lathe. So a little bit different.
Thank you.
This is a charcuterie board that I made out of spalted hackberry. And it has 3 coats of salad bowl finish on it. And I made it for a wedding present for tomorrow night.
Oh. So you gotta get it home and wrap it.
Yeah, so please don't drop it if you look at it. I don't have time to fix it.
Okay. You're gonna have to tell us what this is.
I brought a couple things. My wife has arthritis, okay, and she loves to read in bed, okay, but she has a hard time holding the book open, okay. So this is what I call a thumb reader. She puts her thumb in it, holds the book like this, and this holds the pages open, okay. So it's just something small out of scrap, okay, and I actually carved some of the things with my CNC router, okay, so that I made one for each of our bridge club members with the bridge things in it, okay? So it's helpful. The other thing I did make for her, I didn't bring, she has a hard time turning off the light at night, okay? Now picture, the light with a little plastic thing that you turn, okay? That's pretty small to grip. So I carved a wooden thing much smaller than this, but kind of in the same shape, and she can turn that very easily, okay?
Great
Now,
idea.
one other thing,
Is this yours? Yep.
I don't know if you've ever seen a Joker game, okay? It's played with marbles. I think it's a lot like a Sorry game, okay? My son bought one off Etsy, I think it was, and he said, Dad, I only got 6 and I need 8. Can you make 2 others? So I made 2 for him, okay? But then I thought to myself, I said, I think you can make these with cars. So my first design for the cars, this is a Datsun 240Z. That's a Mustang GT. I've got trucks. I've got Chevrolets. I've got everything.
Eldorado?
Yep, Eldorado. So my first attempt at this, I made it, and I realized the car designs, because they end at different points, okay, they were hard to match up, okay? So what I did was I wound up making on the back a slide, okay? So this slides and adapts to any of the other cars, okay? So it has a peg hole here and then a peg on the back, okay? So you just play with marbles and cards.
Very cool. All right, is there anything else on the table anyone wants to show and tell? No? One more? Okay. Oh, I thought that was one of Wayne Humphrey's toys he was.
Okay, this is one of those toys that I had seen in an antique one that a friend of mine had. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me borrow it for measurements or anything like that, so all I had to work from was a picture from the internet. Can you see the picture? It was made by Play School in the 1950s, and they called it Bang-A-Ball. I didn't make up the name, that's what they actually called it. And I thought it was a great toy. I made this for my nephew, the original one, and again, I had to literally make the drawings from a picture. Now, you can see it in a picture and it just doesn't explain itself, but the purpose is you hit the lever to make the ball go through. Now, the beautiful thing about this is I made this for my great nephew, which is my brother's grandson. Okay, it's a great toy for a kid, but after about a half an hour of the grandson playing with this, my brother appreciates me more. So, a great fun toy to try. It's actually pretty simple to make. Take a look at it and see what you think.
All right, thank you. Okay, I lost my thing. Anything else? We'll move on to our featured speaker. Okay, you guys. If you're gonna let me do this, you gotta do it. Nope, I want the intro page. Oh, one more. There, okay. So Bill, I think you're gonna come and introduce in a few more words our own Dan, I call him our toolman, Coleman, who's going to speak on everything you want to know about bandsaws but we're afraid to ask. I'm going to ask Bill to give him a proper introduction.
Which side do you want to stand on?
And I'll give you the clicker so you can control your own.
All my junk's on the other side.
Do we need to get it? Okay. Dan Coleman is our speaker tonight. He is the member with the expertise in tools and maintains the equipment in the shop. He does a great job for us.
Over there. I left my water over there.
And once he gets up here, I'll let him take over.
Well, I tell you now, you're not going to hear everything I know about bandsaws. We would be here until about 2 in the morning probably. And I know from education that our butts don't understand that and our bladders are too small because we're all getting old. But I had directions basically from two people who hadn't communicated with each other. But tonight, they suggested, and so now I'm going to kind of take my own suggestions. What you're going to get, it's going to be short compared to what most of my presentations have been. I'm down to about 35 slides, so it should go pretty quick. At least that's the plan. I want to talk about bandsaws for a little bit. One of the guys wanted some history. So they wanted maintenance, buying suggestion from Bill, and then how to set it up. So I'm going to try to go to all those. Some of those things don't fit in order real well. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. So my slides could be a little difficult. Okay, in the beginning, and bandsaws have been around for a long time, it only takes a wheel and a beam. You know, you see them on the internet made out of bicycles and all kinds of stuff, you know. But in the beginning, they were all cast iron, and they were all this C-shaped cast iron. Most of them did not split in two. That's a hollow casting. And if you know anything about castings, making that core is more difficult than making the pattern to make it. You know, and the core cuts down the weight usually by a half or so. And also, believe it or not, cast iron will flex just a smidgen, which you got to have that too. Most of the wheels, in the beginning, there were wood, a lot of them. Most of them were spoked in the old days. And your size determined by the diameter of that wheel. And for the most part, you can get almost that in cut under the wheels. You know, you're going to lose whatever it takes for a guard, which, as you notice here, no guards. And the old ones didn't have guards. If you go to vintagemachinery.org, you can go by tool or manufacturer or anything, but you can go to whatever tool you want, click on that, and you can go to the images, and you can have a field day. If you're a history nut, you can spend hours over the history of all these tool companies and stuff. But they started out like this. Most of them are what I would consider right-handed, and that the saw blade is on the right side. If you were a shipbuilder, if you were up in Maine, you could have this left or right. And those are called ship saws when it's on the wrong side, or meat saws now, because meat saws are on the wrong side. Guys try to convert them. This one actually has the table in between there. You can still find these. and they're highly valued, actually. Most of them were flat belt driven off of overhead flat belts. But they run smooth because of the big diameter. You got a lot of centrifugal force going around that big wheel, and they cut real smooth. A friend of mine that we go to his barn shop has a real nice big one, and he does a lot of resawing. The next step to that, and this saw that you see here was almost identical to this in the early 30s. This is the Delta 14-inch taken from the back. It was available with a gearbox on it too, and a planetary system. This is basically the saw we have in the shop. This one is not ours, but it's basically the same thing. And notice that it's split in the middle right here. And the advantage of that, that wasn't an original Hessen and Anderson design from the 20s, and that's where Delta Rockwell got their beginning. They rebranded Hessen and Anderson stuff. Didn't have that. They were solid. I had one of those and sold it to a guy in Arkansas. But the beauty of that is you can split that apart and you can put a riser block in there. Okay? And you can resaw to 12 inches when you do that. The problem there is you're losing some rigidity. At 12 inches, you're kind of stressing that saw. They say on some of these, like Grizzly says, you can put a 3/4 inch blade on it. That's bunk. You're going to break that saw. You're going to ruin the spring right off the bat because you're going to stress the spring trying to tighten it down. These things are designed for 1/2 inch blades, no thicker than 25 thousandths of an inch, because the thicker the blade, the more resistance to make it go in a circle around that wheel. Most of the blades are 15 to 20 thousandths thick. You know, I use metal cutting blades on my Delta. You just buy them with a lot of teeth, with not very many teeth in them. And they're like 25 thousandths. They tension perfect, and they work fine. Now, the wheels on these originally were stamped, some of them. In the smaller versions of this was made in a 10-inch and a 12 and a 14. And they were stamped sheet metal, laminated together or riveted together with a bearing in the middle. Then the wheel on the outside of the wheel was rubber. You got to have a tire on the wheel, and that rubber served a couple purposes. It absorbs shock, just like the spring does, but that was also the mechanism that they used to put crown on the wheel. And the older folks that ever remember flat belts, they have a little bit of crown on the tire, on the pulleys all the time, because the physics of that is the belt will always run to the crown. And that's why your bandsaw stays where it does when it's running, not even touching the blades. It's because of the crown on the tire. And you put that in, they spin that, and then you use like a drum sander, and they cut that angle of about a couple degrees on each side with that gentle crown to it, and then your blade always seeks the crown. Okay. The newer one of this, a lot of them, you get urethane tires. Okay, the disadvantage of urethane tires, I'll tell you, there's advantage and disadvantage. The advantage is they're easy. Your wheel already has the crown cut in it, and it's got an edge on each side so it won't run off. But the urethane, when you soak it in some hot water, you get you a couple clamps to help you for a third hand, or you find a third hand person, and you just stretch it real good, you put it on, you're done. Let the water dry off of it, you fire the machine right up. The disadvantage is if your wheel isn't perfect, or if the glue spot in that urethane isn't perfect, you're going to have a thump. And every time that does that, your frame and your spring has to absorb that thump. See, so you can't glue them. So if they get too stressed when you're resawing, they start stretching, they're going to roll up in a knot and they're going to come off. And if you don't have them perfectly round, you can't use your little Dotco grinder with a cylinder, abrasive cylinder on it, and grind it down, which you can the rubber. The rubbers that you get now, you glue on. Your original tire may have just been slipped on, and it was rubber. And that would be whether it be the Delta, Powermatic, Grizzly. The orange ones are pretty popular. I use one brand when I replace them, and that's the Ultra Blue that I buy online. And it's a full 1/8 of an inch thick, and the glue line is perfect. I've never had one fail when I put them on any of the saws I sell or resell. And like I say, it's a piece of cake for putting them on. You know, I can put the whole set on in 15, 20 minutes. The newer saws now, because people would like to have more resaw, they've taken a pitch from the metalworking saws. All the metalworking saws were welded frames for the most part, because this is a woodworking saw, but this bottom box down here was big, which gave them really nice weight on the bottom. It was bottom loaded, but inside that they could hide a gearbox, a Reeves drive, a big old motor with a great big pulley, and they could get that blade speed down to like 65 feet a minute compared to that woodworking saw that's running at 2,500 to 3,000 feet per minute. But the other thing that they figured out, well, you know, that wheel doesn't have to be very big. If we're wanting to do resawing, we can take that 14, 15-inch diameter wheel, but we can make this beam in here, as long as it's nice and sturdy, we can make that beam as tall as we want. We get 13, 14 inches of resaw under the guides. So the newer saws are going toward this. And if you want a whole treatise on band saws, it's Louis Itera. He's an elderly gentleman in Florida. You go and look for his website, Louis Itera. He's got a catalog, and he can tell you everything you ever wanted to know about band saws and more. And part of it is he discusses what he believes is the difference between buying something like this. He says that they're loud. He says most of the time they're engineered to 20th century, 21st century engineering, so they have the minimum material in them. You know, there's no overkill. Like on the old saws, there's a lot of overkill a lot of times. So, you know, that's just that's the advantage and the disadvantage of the newer saws like this. You know, they don't take up much room for getting a lot of resaw capacity. Most of them have cast iron and have cast iron wheels. You always want to buy cast iron wheels and trunnions if you can on these bigger saws, because the cast iron absorbs vibration, both noise and vibration from the machine. Okay, then next thing you're going to look at when you buy is you're going to look at the guides. Now this is basically the typical guide on most hobby type saws or light industry saws. The one on the left is your typical Sears saw. Well, it could be Delta, because it's got the Deltas originally come with the blocks on them like this. And then this over here is a Carter replacement. Carter makes replacement guides for almost every saw from 10 inches up to 40 inches, different kinds. You know, and this is just typical of a ball bearing one, and that bearing could either be running like this or it could be running flat like that back here. It could actually be a solid disc and then a pin, and that sits in a sleeve and there's a ball at the back. And you just put oil in there and that one ball just absorbs all that thrust, you know, and it just wears the face on it. There's places that reproduce that. I've replaced them with ball bearings for guys, and they kind of like that because they can wear it out, go down to the hardware store and buy another bearing. This is a typical setup and adjustment, usually with an Allen wrench. And this bearing, this upper bearing, it's going to wear, okay? You want to be able to unscrew it somehow and turn it around. And you want to make sure when you're setting this up, because it's this hexagon that it's mounted to, or it could be circular behind it, that shaft, the part that mounts to is off center. And most people don't really realize that by rotating that hexagon, pull it out, flip it over, you can regulate how far it is between the blade and the center. You want that blade running just outside that inner piece of metal, okay? You don't want it hitting it because that's not spinning, but you want to get as much of the meat of that outside race as you can. So you rotate that either round or square or whatever brand it is until you can get it over there close to that inner race. The bottom ones here, we're going to talk about alignment later again, but the bottom ones, those are usually, they could either have a screw here that goes over back and forth, or this could be a cam that you loosen, you rotate it, and you tighten the bolt down. The only, and particularly the one out in the shop, anytime you do that, you want to rotate this right cam clockwise so it comes up into the blade, and the same thing on this other side, you want to rotate it counterclockwise so it comes up to the blade. That way, as those bearings gather sawdust, and they will gather sawdust, if sooner or later they grab and it vibrates loose, then you're not rotating that cam into where it locks everything up and something's got to give. Blade, wheel, something's got to bend or break or something. So and then you do the same thing on the bottom bearings. Now, bearings are nice. I'm not a great big fan, but if you're going to adjust them, you've got to be careful as you don't tear them up. Looks like that from the side, and as we're going to talk about later, that's how much clearance you need and everything. One thing, this is a really pretty good picture of what the saw blade should look like. Saw blades for wood, they've got two purposes, and one part's just as hard as the other part. The cutting part is what we always think about. But when it gets cutting, it's got to also remove that material. And you always got to remember the 3-tooth rule for you guys that are doing small toys and stuff like that. You want 3 teeth contacting the wood all the time, so that's why you use the fine blades. But for the most part, if we're doing half, 3/4 inch and bigger stuff, then that's the less number of teeth that you want. And you can see here that the gullet, that's the part that where there's no tooth, the back part, that gullet is responsible for carrying away the sawdust. And there's different shapes of teeth. I'd look in a Grizzly catalog or something, they tell you a really good explanation, or get it online. Skip tooth is what you really want for resawing, if you can get it, 3 or 4 teeth per inch. And a skip tooth is just what it says. It looks like a regular tooth, and it looks like they forgot to put one on there. You know, somebody got crazy and cut one off every other time. But they're great for resawing. This is the normal Delta setup. This is an upper, and it uses square blocks. Those blocks can be steel, they could be plastic or resin, ceramic. In the old days, they weren't square, they were round, and they were usually wood. An oil-soaked dowel rod went in those. And you still find at flea markets and stuff, you find an old antique saw, and it'll have a chunk of wood in it. You know, and you could use, if you could get lignin vitae, I mean, that'd be great. But they just soaked whatever. Oak, white oak was used, you'd soak it in oil, you know, turn it around, soak it in oil, shove it in there. And then they'd just take a pocket knife and cut the front edge off of that circle a little bit to give the teeth some clearance, and you had blade guides. That's actually the wrong place, but while I've got it there, if you over tension your blade, you're going to bend this. Not this rod, you're going to bend this. Okay? Now, they've all copied the Delta. I mean, I haven't tried it piece for piece, especially since they changed their saw a little bit, but I think the Grizzly piece will fit that Delta. But you're going to bend that piece. You can't buy the ones for the old Sears anymore, and I've actually made one of those for my buddy. But, you know, the Grizzly, it's $15 plus shipping. $30 for a Delta online. There's a guy out in Wisconsin that sells them. But that's the part that fails. And you'll wonder why you can't adjust it, because when that bends, you keep turning that crank, well, it won't bend anymore or go anymore because the bottom part down here hits the frame. And you can, like anything aluminum, it will bend once. When you try to straighten it, oh, if you're right with God, it might straighten for you, but don't hold your breath. You know, it's probably going to break. The proper name escapes me right now. This is the axle, but in the Grizzly, this is just darn near solid. But in the Delta, this is hollowed out. It's the lever, I guess, you know, and your adjustment rod comes in from the back. And it pushes in, blade runs back, let it out, blade runs forward. But and if you buy the replacement part based on, especially a Delta or a Grizzly, this could be metric. The bearing sizes are the same, but this nut could be metric, or it could be imperial. It could be put in with two little dowels like this one, or the Delta, it's got one long piece that goes all the way through it, and that's also what holds the axle in. It's got a little scallop cut out of it. So you don't want to bend them, you know, especially if you got the Delta or the Powermatic. Powermatic, same thing. They'll bend. These won't bend. You replace it one time, now something else is going to break. I want to talk about springs a little bit. This is a picture of the Cobra Spring, and that's one that Carter sells. Now, the one that came in your saw is definitely not a Cobra Spring. It'll be a round wire spring, probably around 100 thousandths of an inch diameter, probably about 2.5 inches. If you got a jet, it might be 3 inches. You know, you put that on a scale on your drill press and set your stop for 3/4 of an inch and turn it down till you hit 3/4 and see what kind of pressure you got. Probably going to get around 140 pounds. That's if you haven't collapsed this spring a couple times. These springs, about 30% of their length that's the maximum you want to compress them. You go beyond that, you go past their point of elasticity, and you ruin the spring. And I bet if you bought a used one from somebody, a used bandsaw, where you don't know its history, I almost bet that spring's bad. You know, it's been compressed a lot, and it'll be fine for 1/4 and 3/8 inch blades, and it'll be fine for a 1/2 inch blade until you try to resaw with it, and then it'll go through the board and it'll go like this and back out because it'll curve in there. The Cobra blade or spring, I don't know what they sell them for, $30 or something. I mean, at one time they were 20. It's a rectangular spring, rectangular wire spring, and it's nothing more than a die spring. And you can see it there. You can see how it's so nice and squared off. You can buy a die spring from MasterCar for $8. And you buy the 2 3/4 if it's for a Delta, or if it's for a Grizzly, or some of the other imported ones that are the exact same thing as a Grizzly, or 3-inch one if it's a Jet. And these have 30% is what they're rated at, and they'll give you a couple 100 pounds. And your saw will work just wonderful with a couple 100 pounds. I run a 1/2 inch blade. I cut aluminum with mine and don't even slow it down. And I run 16, every turn gives you a 1/16 of an inch if you got a 3/8, 16 threaded tensioning rod, you know, which that one's not. Probably that looks like it's imported. 8 turns to 10 turns and it's perfect. And I know that over time. And when I put it in on my saw, I turned it 10 turns, and I made sure that it marked up with a 1/2 inch, because that's the maximum I'm going to use. And that's the maximum I want my spring to do. And if it wasn't a 1/2 inch, I went down, took it apart, and I put a washer underneath it. And while I was there, I put a red washer, fiber washer that I could see. And when I crank it to 10, it's right on the 1/2 inch mark. And it works every time. And it worked a whole lot better than any of the factory ones on any of my saws that I've bought in the last 20 years. So an $8 spring from a MasterCar, the bronze, works great. And it does it for 1/4 the cost. And there's the numbers right there. It's 20%. That's a typo. It should be 30. I looked at the chart right after I did that. And there's what it'll look like on almost all the 14-inch saws. That's a Grizzly. You can tell by the green paint. Their screw is probably metric. So that may not be, the number of turns may not be right. You got to figure that on your own. Okay, make it easy on yourself. Get rid of that short knob that's usually right here and there's a knuckle buster, and you don't have a clue how many turns you're turning it because you can't keep track of it going around there. Put some kind of a wheel or lever. I mean, I've used the old lever from Jealousy Windows, and a couple new ones of those I've used. That's a wheel off of a radial arm saw that got sent back into Emerson. It doesn't make a difference. The fancy chrome wheel's kind of nice, but I mean, it's not necessary. Carter also will sell you a ratcheting one of these. We have a little ratcheting knob on top, or they'll sell you one with a wheel. You know, my buddy Alex, he'll sell you anything you want for that saw. And most of the stuff's good stuff too, because he's a good guy. That was just bent metal. That's a piece of 13-inch all thread, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nuts, and a plastic handle, and 2 little angles bent on the sides. Put it together, jam everything up really tight, and put some Loctite down there to where that handle can't move, and you're in business. But you can count, and you'll get dead nuts every time. You'll have repeatability. Okay, when we get ready to do it, tension our blade or put our blades on, this is a saw like out at the shop. First of all, you got to get a little bit of tension on the blade. Okay, so if it's got the big lever, we'll see here in a little bit, but here's your tension handle on this saw. Okay, instead of being on the top and everything visible, on these new welded up frame saws, that's usually on the bottom. Okay, this here is going to tilt your wheel forward or backwards, and this one's going to just lock it. This could be something as small as just a bolt with a wing nut type head on it, a thumb screw, and it could have a wing nut on it for a locking mechanism. That's what the Powermatics and the Deltas and Grizzlies, that's what they all have on them. The little stuff, you know, the regular wheeled ones, but these welded frame ones are going to have something like this. Okay, it may have a lock, a loosen and a tighten. I loosen mine because I don't work in my shop every day. You know, Wayne's down his shop most of the time, he never loosens his. He's got one of Carter's real fancy release things on it, and it'll release it like in 3 different levels. But some people don't do it, some people do. Okay, if you got cast iron wheels, it probably won't bother it. You know, cast aluminum, it might. I don't know. You know, verdict's still out on that. And some of it's how tight you do it all the time. But in the shop, that's where we've got a sign that sits on the bandsaw, whether it's loose or whether it's tight on both of the bandsaws. So if you're going to put a new blade on, you're going to put the blade on, you're going to loosen the tension, you're going to turn it up, and it's probably not going to be tight. At least we hope not it's tight, because you might be going to a smaller blade instead of a bigger blade. And but you got to do all your tensioning and everything in the tightened position. Doesn't do any good doing it in a loose position and decide, oh, I better tighten it now, because you've done all your work in a non-using position. Okay, adjust the guides. And here's where we try to put everything together. If you've got a small table, like a 14-inch saw or a 12-inch saw, take the table off if it's easy, because it's just so much simpler. If you've watched Alex Snodgrass over to Woodworker's show, he takes the table off everything. It's just 2 bolts. Some of them, it's just 1 bolt that holds them on. You're going to adjust that rear guide. You're going to tension the blade all the way up. You're going to spin it by fingers, and you're going to get that blade to where the gullet, the back of the gullet, we showed you where the gullet was a while ago. See if I got a picture of the blade real quick. There we go. The back of this gullet is going to be on the center line of that upper wheel. Now, that may not match up with the center of the bottom wheel, but as long as that thing is on the wheel, don't worry about it. All this stuff about planar, being coplanar and all that stuff, as long as it's on the wheel, don't worry about it. Rikon specifically says they intentionally do not make theirs coplanar. So they could be or they could not be. You're working on the top wheel, and you want the gullet. You want that gullet on the center of that upper wheel. Okay? Let me go back now. 15 thousandths. Nobody's going to measure that. The idea here is you don't want it touching when it's not feeding material. Because that thing, if your blades run 3,000 feet per minute, how fast do you think that bearing's spinning? That's not very big. There's only 4 inches total circumference in that bearing, so it's trucking right along when you're running 3,000 feet a minute. So normally, if you've got a good, just an air gap, basically, then when you start feeding it, it'll feed to the bearing. So 15 thousandths is what they say. That's about a business card thickness and a half, is about what that is. Business card's 10 thousandths thick. Okay, should not ride against the rear stop or the rear bearing when the stock's not being fed. And then once you feed it, it should start spinning. And it's going to spin fast. And you adjust that lower one the same way. And you want it the same amount. So you're going to get that top one adjusted, and then you're going to adjust the bottom one. Then you're going to take a scrap piece of board. You're not going to use your finger or your thumb, but you're going to lightly shove on it to see if it touches. Okay, and everything's unplugged. So just lightly push it. You want them both to match at the same time. Okay, if you've got square blocks like this, you're going to use a piece of paper. That's 4 to 5 thousandths of an inch thick between the blades. Just fold it and put it around the blade, pull it down, push the 2 wheels against it, or the 2 blocks against it, and you want to make sure you don't get it going either way. You're going to take your Allen wrench on the front or your thumb screws, whichever, and you're going to tighten them down. Okay? Then when you pull that paper out, I want you to look to see with a flashlight, or stick your little piece of paper and make sure it'll slide in one side and not in, and it'll slide the other side too, so it's centered. Those blocks are setting behind the teeth. Okay? The only exception to that would be is if you're using some kind of a cool block or you're using like a wooden block that you want to just cut a little edge off of it, or let the teeth cut a little corner off of it. But for the most part, we're talking behind the teeth. If the blocks rub hard against it, you're going to take the temper out of your blade, and it's just not going to last as long. Louis Artera will go through the whole thing. He's taken measurements, temperature measurements and everything with all kinds of blocks and all kinds of stuff, of mechanisms. Underneath, you're going to have to fight that while you're underneath there. But There you go. You're gonna set the bottom ones the same way. And they're gonna be more difficult because that dirty table's down underneath there blocking all your light. And if you got hands the size of mine, you're gonna be skinning your knuckles all the time too. Okay? Same way up on the top. Can't see that one very well. It's not a good picture actually. But the blade's running in here. This one's got 2 bearings. And this is like the one out in the shop where this is a cam operated mechanism. Matter of fact, this is our shop saw. And that bearing right there is right at the back of the gullet so that it's not deforming the teeth. You know, the blade has set, and if you're going to deform the teeth, bring your own blade. Okay, the difference there, this is a little delta saw. And you notice on this one there's little thumb screws here in the back. You're not doing stuff by hand like you're on the imported saw. The delta saw is a saw that was copied by the Far East folks and broke the bank, basically. That was the first tool, period, that was copied by the Far East Post people, almost part for part. This is the part they didn't make. This is the bottom. This is what shoves the bottom guides, and on a Delta, this is in the front, right here, where you can adjust this without getting your fingers anywhere near the blade. That's why the schools. That's the saw you're gonna find in every school. If you don't find that one, school board had a little extra money and they bought a Powermatic. But this is the part they didn't make, and they replaced it with little cast aluminum blocks or pot metal blocks that does the same thing. Carter has replaced this. This was Wayne's. He put Carter blocks on his. You take this off, throw it away. And there's better made than the one overseas, but still you've done away with this thing of being able to do all this adjustment with your fingers away from the blade. And it just locks down with thumb screws or with set screws when you get done. Saw blades. Blades are sized by their width and their thickness and their teeth per inch. I mentioned a 3-tooth per inch rule. So if you were working all the time with 1/2-inch material, you'd want to use a blade that would give you 3 teeth in contact with all the time. So you're looking at probably, what, 12? No, 6 or 8 tooth per inch, and that'd be a pretty fine cut for you. They all around, I use like a 6 or an 8 most of the time. But now on my little saw, I can run an 1/8-inch blade, and it's got like 12 or 14 teeth per inch because that's all doing fine work. I use it instead of a scroll saw. Now, 14-inch saws can easily handle a 1/2-inch blade, 25 thousandths of an inch thick. Most of the like Deltas, Wolf, what it's the Slicer, the Wolf, whatever, they're 20 thousandths. If you've got a 10-inch saw, or if you buy a 3/16 blade, it could even be 15 thousandths thick. Now, when you change to a skinny blade, you gotta reset your blocks, or you change to a fat blade, 25 thousandths, you gotta reset your blocks. So don't forget that. 17-inch saws, like our big one, that'll handle 35 thousandths thick blade pretty well. And people try to put a 1 or 1.5-inch blade on there, but you got to remember, you can't have a blade so wide, and a 1-inch blade will have like 7/8 of an inch of raw material. You got to have a wheel that's 2 times 7/8 inch and 3/4 of an inch wide, because you got to get that solid half on the back side of that tire. So when they say, oh, we can put an 1.5-inch blade on that, well, you can put it on there, but I wouldn't guarantee how it's going to cut. And it might be so heavy that it might be hard to bend and tension. You're going to have a hard time tensioning a blade like that to what the manufacturer is going to recommend, because they're going to recommend like a 1/2-inch blade being tensioned to 2,000 pounds per square inch. And a 1/2-inch blade where you got 3/8 of an inch of solid material, it's 25 thousandths thick, you do the multiplication, you're going to be right at 2,000 pounds per square inch. So that's why it works so well with a 14-inch blade. And if you use a 1-inch blade on there and a 35 thousandths, you probably got enough spring and enough strength to handle that. Alex swears up and down you can resaw all day long with a 3/8 or a 1/2-inch blade if it's the right blade. And the right blade is only going to have about 3 or 4 teeth an inch on it for resawing. Okay, so if you've got one of the new Rikons or Grizzlies and it's this capability, or if it's a resaw saw, you know, the new one's 14-inch or 15, but they got 12 inches of capacity. If your wheel is wide enough, then you can go 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches, but for the most part, the ones I've put on for other people have been 3/4 inch blades. I can tell you that the 3/4 inch carbide blade is the cat's pajamas. It cuts so slick. If you can afford to buy it for $150, you know, it cuts neat. I did one for a guy this past winter. It was pretty neat. Okay, here we are again with the diagram we saw a while ago. This is the part right here. This line right here has to be in the middle of that blade. So if your blade's too thick, you're going to run out of wheel. And then you're going to, which is not at all a loss, because in the old days we said center the blade on the wheel, on the crown. And a lot of people did well with that. But Alex has proven the science of this is that when you feed that material, you're pushing the blade back. And the blade's always wanting to run to the center. See, so it's trying to get back to where it belongs. Plus, your blocks or your bearings are on the back half of the blade. So all you have to do is control the back half of the blade if the teeth are on the center of the blade. See, so the science is there, you know. Can't believe it took that long to figure it out. I know a guy in Springfield, he supplies the laminates for Black Widow Bow Company. And they make recurves, but they make what's the ones where the limbs bolt on? He compounds. He holds for a piece that's about 2 1/4 inches wide. He does all that resawing there in his shop on, now he's got Oliver's. He just had 20-inch Delta bandsaws for a while. I had 3 of them. He holds plus or minus 5 thousandths of an inch, front to back. And he's cutting exotics that are hard to cut. But he does that totally by setting his saw up and then fine-tuning where that blade rides on the wheel. If he needs to get just a little bit more to the left, he'll bring it up. If he needs a little more to the right, he'll bring it to the back just a smidgen. But he holds plus or minus 5 thousandths of an inch. It's pretty remarkable. I've got some of his leftovers in my scrap box or under the steps, and they're pretty neat. You're going to be basing the width of your blade on what you're cutting. Now, if you're doing decorative work and you're like me, I'm basically replacing a scroll saw with my little 10-inch Homecraft. I'm running that 1/8 of an inch blade because I can just darn near turn that thing in a circle. Okay, 1/4 inch circles you can make with it if you got a good blades. You know, and you got it set up right. You know, forever I ran a 1/4 inch blade. You know, because I could cut little circles with that thing. If you see there's telling you that you can cut a 5/8 of an inch radius. That's 1 1/4 inches. You don't have any trouble cutting 1.5 inch circles. You could make checkers with it. Pretty easy. And I use a circle template with mine. It's got a nail in the center, and I spin circles with that. I hardly ever cut a freehand circle. I always use a fixture. But you can see with a 1/2 inch blade, though, I'm limited down there to 2 5/8. So that 6-inch circle is about it, you know, with a 1/2 inch blade. And that's if you're running teeth that are pretty coarse. Real fine teeth, you can't get that tight. 6 inches is it. Always check the weld on a new blade, always. You should never really see a line in it. If it is, that's a cold weld. As a welding inspector, I'd see those x-rays and that line would show up on a tubing weld, and we go cut it out. because it's a stress riser. If you see a sharp black line, it's not welded all the way through. The other side will look nice, but that side's not welded all the way through. Some folks even take the couple teeth above the weld and they'll hone those off a little bit, make them a little skinny so they don't cut much. You know, take a little stress off. That's kind of an old thought. People don't do that anymore. But they do hone the back edge. Once you get your saw going really well, especially if you're going to do stuff where you want to back out. Backing out's kind of a taboo, but you're going to do it. Okay? I don't care what to tell you, you're going to do it. Take your stone, sharpening, and run around the back of that real gentle like. And you're knocking that edge off. And you don't just have to do that one time. Because remember that saw blade's run against hardened steel ball bearing, and it's going to get a little burr on it. You never want to test that with your fingers, even when it's off. You never want to test that. Okay. Take the stone, knock the burr off while it's running, and that'll let you back out. It won't grab. Okay. So just a hint there. Tracking. A new blade should track when you're cutting some clear material that's not got wavy grain or anything to it. I always test mine on pine or a straight piece of walnut. Cutting with a miter gauge will test it for you. You cut with a miter gauge, and when it gets to the end of that cut and flies through the back, that blade should be exactly where it came out. It should be exactly where it came out. If it moved, you got drift. Or if you're trying to rip and you got drift, you should be able to get rid of that drift. If you work on the same side of the blade all the time, you're going to wear the blade out on one side. The blade will always cut toward the sharp side. So if you got an old blade and you say, I got drift, I don't know where it came from. Well, when was the last time you ripped with it to see if you wore it out doing something else, especially on some abrasive hardwood? I use a miter gauge with mine all the time. I don't bother to walk across the basement to the table saw. I just cut it off on either on the chop saw that's right there, or I'll cut it off on a bandsaw. If it's wider than 6 inches, I have to use a bandsaw, and it cuts perfect. And if it doesn't, then you need to adjust maybe loosen up those 6 bolts underneath and adjust the table a little bit, and tighten it back up, and test it again. You know, that's just there's 6 bolts underneath there. Thought I brought a trunnion with me. But you can loosen those 6 bolts, turn it a little bit, tighten it down. On a bigger saw, you may have 4 bolts and only 1 trunnion on a big cast iron saw. But you can loosen those holes will let you fudge it a little bit. If nothing else, then you adjust your fence to make up for it. You won't be able to cross cut with it, but adjust your fence. Some people don't like using a fence. Wayne uses a fingerboard, where it's just a pointed board right at the teeth, and as he guides it through, he just guides it. And that's cut to the thickness of whatever he wants to resaw. I've got an attachment for my fence that'll let me do that, but mine cuts straight. Even a new blade might not track real good in gnarly wood. You know, and you can tension it up as much as you can without ruining your spring or without damaging your saw. I mean, you'll bend that darn, whatever that thing's called. I can't think of it right now. But you'll damage something. But if you don't have enough tension and you don't have enough teeth in the blade, when you cut, it'll go through and it'll do this. You just make a circle, because it starts where it belongs with the guides. It'll follow the outside one way or the other, and then right as it goes through the table, it'll get right back where it belongs. That's telling you that you can't get rid of the sawdust, and you got too many teeth. And that'll work. That'll tell you that in cedar. I cut cedar ramps for my riding lawnmower so I could change the oil in it. One side drains water and the other side holds water if you set them up where they were flat. So a new blade on hardwood, if you got too many teeth, it still won't cut straight. Okay, I wanted to add these few comments in here. Our saw out at the shop, this locks your guides. And you're going to check, when you do all your checking, you're going to check that with it get down, well, all the way up. But you're also going to check it all the way down to see if you got your bearings set right. You need to loosen this, okay? And then this cranks it up and down. Okay, make sure this is loose. Okay, we're on about our third gear out there, third or fourth gear set up here, because this is Delrin plastic, and they strip. Okay, yeah. Wayne's got the price tag on them, but you can see that the blade there is the shiny part. So it sits back there in the hole where you can see it. It's not too hard to change, but if you don't loosen the part that's holding this behind this plate, holding your bar up and down, you're going to strip this. They're pretty fragile. Okay, when you set up your table, this is the first thing you're probably going to check is your angle right there. I didn't shoot a picture of it. The easiest way is to have a straight edge on the bottom of your board, mark the top with an X, hold the board up like this, cut you a little saw curve about 1/4 of an inch deep, keep that bottom edge on the bottom, take it to the back of the blade, and see if that blade falls right in your saw curve. If it doesn't, it's telling you twice as much as what you need to move the table. So if that thing's sitting over there at 10 degrees, you need to move your table about 5, and you need to mark that one out and try a new one. It's a whole lot more accurate than using your square that's probably been dropped on the floor 14 times. You know, and then you also go to the back of the blade. On thin material, it's not going to make any difference. But on thicker material, you're making these toy cars that are 1.5 inches thick, or you're making something where you're cutting 3.5 inches thick, a 4x4 for something. If it's not pretty darn close, you're going to have a skewed cut all the time. And if that's the case, then you have to go under your table and loosen the nuts, the bolts that are holding that table to the trunnion, and you're going to have to put a washer or two. If you got a gap at the top, then you're going to have to put the washers under the ones that are in the back. If you got a gap at the front, or well at the bottom, then you're going to have to put ones in the front, you know, to draw that thing back where it belongs. Okay, and you're going to do that underneath at the trunnions. This is trunnion for almost all 14-inch saws. Use this trunnion. So you would there's one bolt here and 2 in the back, just like here, 1 in the back, 2 in the front. So if you needed to tilt that table, that's what you do. And when you get ready to tighten those down, you want to have these here just a little bit snug, but not tight, and you want to wiggle that as you tighten it down so you don't stress anything and break the ears off those aluminum trunnions, okay? Alex Snodgrass, he's a guy from over at the Woodworkers Show, and he and his dad and mom run that operation. He is the definitive person when it comes to setting these saws up to cut nice. Look, he's got videos. Now he's got a Facebook and a YouTube channel where he's even visiting with other folks when he's doing it. And there's a couple other guys at Super Tune bandsaws on YouTube. You can learn how to do this as good as him. I can tell you that right now. You know, I guess I'm not ever going to say that I'm as slick as he is, because he is just damn not slick. There's no doubt about it. But folks, I haven't found one yet I couldn't tune up. You know, that was halfway good, decent shape saw. And you can do the same thing. It's not rocket science. Bandsaws, if they can make a bandsaw to cut logs out of a bicycle, it's not that tough. You know, think about it. And they do that on YouTube. Yeah, and the guy from Canada makes them out of wood and runs it down a ladder. You know, Matthias Waddell. So it's not rocket science. You know, it's just like a table saw is not rocket science. You can put a blade on a mandrel, screw a 2x4 to a piece of plywood, and you can trim down boards all day long. You know, my buddies were kids. That's how they built their house. They tore down other houses. They recut all those 2x4s. So, you know, don't abuse your saw. You know, I'm a firm believer in not abusing equipment. And read your manual. Okay. There's 2 books back here by Fryer. It's Cabinet Making and Millwork, and those are the Bibles for woodworking, really. And there's another one back here by Christoph for tool maintenance. Both of those are just books that are they're the holy grails for this stuff. Check those out of the library, read them if you don't know what your equipment is and how to properly use it, how to properly set it up and maintain it. It'll keep you from hurting yourself, it'll keep you from tearing your equipment up. Either of those 2 books are just, as far as I'm concerned, the Fryer Cabinet Making Millworking book, that's required. Everybody should have one of them in some edition. You don't need a new edition, it can be an old edition. Okay, we're kind of pushing the time here. I tried to go quickly, but as you all know, it's kind of hard for me to do because I love what I do, you know. I got a couple of minutes for questions if you want to hang around, and I'll answer questions for you the best I can.
How does Louis Iturra spell his last name?
Iturra.
Any other questions for Dan? Yes.
Yeah.
You answer the question, which one should I buy?
Which one should he buy, Dan?
One I have for sale.
I'm kind of an old tool guy, okay? For the home shop, you know, I like the Delta stuff. It's hard to get parts for them now. I'd probably go Grizzly, personally. But I'll tell you that the saw that's at Harbor Freight is identical to the saw that's at Grizzly. It's just that Grizzly probably rejected all those by QC when they came down the line, so they got painted the other green color, and Grizzly's got painted the other green color with the white doors. You know, and with Grizzly, you pick up the phone or go online and you can get parts at your door in 2 or 3 days, most of the time. You know, so I mean that's your choice there. Powermatic is still Powermatic, and I don't know where their saw is being made, but the model 140 or 141, that was the other one you found in schools that had more money. You know, the Powermatic stuff was always just a smidgen above the Delta stuff in the old days. Yeah. Yep. That's the wobble method. You can find that online. That some guys swear by it, but you should be doing that before you tighten up or adjust all your guides. You should have in the center of your wheel, the guides out of the way, and then fire that puppy up and do your flutter test. You know, some guys swear by it. I guess I'm fortunate that there's a guy down in Southwest Missouri that did all the spring research for Walker Turners. Don't buy old Walker Turner stuff. The bearings are all their own bearings. But he couldn't buy the springs, but he was rebuilding all this tension mechanisms and selling them. And he did all the number work, you know, and he sent me all of his information, so I dove into it one day and 2 evenings. And then I came up with this $8, back when I bought my first ones, they were $6 and something, replacement part and I adjusted it to 1/2 inch on the back of my block, tension block, where it says 1/2 inch, I put a black mark. I turned it 10 cranks and made sure that mark was on there. If it wasn't, I put a couple washers underneath it, and then one of them was red, so I can see where it is. And it's perfect, and it works on every blade I put on it. You know, so I'm not gonna bicker with the success of this it just works. You know, 1/2 inch blade, I turn it between 8 and 10. If I'm resawing, I do 10, or cutting something thick. Normal stuff, I just do 8. I cut aluminum with 8. It cuts straight.
So more than one way to do it.
Oh yeah, there's more than one way to do it. Yeah, and Alex just takes it while it's turned off. He just gives it that. Yeah, yeah. Wayne, that's Wayne's method too.
Any
But
other questions?
I never know how hard to push.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. So advantage of 210?
they're
wait,
both-
220 over 110.
They're both spinning the meter the same number of watts. The 220 might run a little cooler. You can use smaller wire because you're putting half the amperage through those wires. So you're drawing 17, let's say 18 amps on 110. You're only going to be drawing 9 on 220, but it's 9 in each one of those wires. Okay, you can run number 8 wire. Or I'm sorry, you can run anything at 20 amps running. You can, not very far. You can run number 12 wire. Okay, when you get bigger, like your saw, that's drawing 25. Well, it doesn't even drive 110. It's drawing close to 20 amps on 220. You know, so he'd be pushing his luck probably running number 12 because your input surge amperage. Tim, what's the surge amperage for something a 20 amp draw motor? You know, 3 times as much right off the bat. So, you know, I'd run number 10 wire, but it's spinning that meter the same amount, whether because it's watts. Yep. 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 That's it. That's the man right there. He's the definitive answer. It's the same, you know, power equals I times E, pi. Any other questions?
I think we should wrap this up if there are no
Okay.
more questions. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.